Hey everyone, I'm back with another video. I'm having a bit of an issue with my hair, if you couldn't tell already. And I think this is why I grew my hair out in the first place, because I don't have to deal with this shit. But growing a hair out has its own share of problems. So this is better, definitely better, especially in this heat. But yeah, it comes with the perks of looking really stupid on camera. Anyway, so this video, it was supposed to be an animation analysis on fireforce, but then I went through Sakugaboru's clips. And that's when I saw just how many of the top-rated clips of fireforce on Sakugaboru were animated by Kazuhiro Miwa. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that over 50% of the Sakuga scenes in fireforce are animated by Kazuhiro Miwa, especially in season 1. In season 2, there were a lot more animators. I don't know why, particularly for season 2, they had more animators. I'm pretty sure season 1 and season 2 were in production simultaneously, or season 2 began in production slightly after season 1, but there is definitely intermixing of production cycles between season 1 and season 2 of Fire Force, but season 2 got most of the resources with the number of animators and stuff, where season 1 mostly just had Kazuhiro Miwa. That's why in season 2 you'll see like an insanely amazing scene almost every single episode, whereas in season 1 you get an amazing scene every other episode, and usually all of them are by Kazuhiro Miwa. Miwa is an incredible animator. He's another one of these master of all trades animators who's just incredible with everything, and his effects animation is particularly impressive. Of course, his effects animation is impressive. He's the lead animator in Fire Force, but the best effects animation in Fire Force is by Riki Matsura. I stand by that. But Miwa is undoubtedly the most influential animator in Fire Force. Like when you think of Naruto's best scenes, you think of Norio Matsumoto's scenes. When you think of My Hero Academia's best moments, you think of Yutaka Nakamura's animation. That is who Kazuhiro Miwa is for Fire Force. Fire Force's animation identity became Kazuhiro Miwa's animation. As far as animation techniques go, he uses a lot of cross flares. He uses a ton of vertical lines. It is not like Yutaka Nakamura's animation where it's just diagonal lines. Like depending on which direction you need to show the motion, the direction of the lines change. In Miwa's case, the lines are almost always vertical. Even if it's like a sideways movement, there will be vertical lines. Of course, I'll explain all of these with examples. He also uses a ton of speed lines, his signature speed lines really. Kazuhiro Miwa's speed lines are extremely unique, and he only started using them recently. I saw some of his older clips and he just uses regular smears, regular speed lines, but his specialized speed lines is something that is super unique. It's just instantly recognizable. It's like Utapon cubes. And finally, build up and release. Now, build up and release is not a technique that is unique to Kazuhiro Miwa or anything. It's one of the basic principles of animation. He emphasizes on the build up. His animation motions, they are very slow, and it's very easy to follow. You'll never lose track of the characters. You'll always understand what's happening on screen. And then the release is super quick. His drawings are so good. It's like a manga coming to life. It really is that way actually. With the smears and his speed lines, all of that looks like it's coming right out of a manga, and it looks so good. So now without further ado, I'll just get into the breakdown of the clips. So some of the clips that I'll use, it's going to be in chronological order. Some I'm just going to pick out randomly, like this one. This is from episode 3 of Fire Force season 2. And I'm using this clip first because this just explains everything about Kazuhiro Miwa's style. His speed lines, unique speed lines that you can already see on your screen right now. Like this is what his speed lines look like. His extremely detailed drawings, his amazing effects animation, and what else is there? Yeah, the vertical lines. So this starts with Shinra getting punched in the abdomen by best boy Karen, and this is what it looks like. So boom and boom. So already there are a bunch of things to talk about, starting with the speed lines, of course. So the speed lines here, it's just drawn the way Kazuhiro Miwa draws his speed lines, but his speed lines also has other unique properties that I'll show later. So here, these scenes, this image is not really animated. It's just one image that's held. Everything before this is the animated part. And the power of Karen's punch is shown by the effects animation. So this blow, the energy, is shooting out of Shinra's back. Karen's punch is so powerful that the energy is being released through Shinra. It's like piercing Shinra. And of course, this classic sonic boom-like technique. Where does it come actually? I need to look at the initiation. Okay, so this is it, right? The beam is very big and then it contracts, and that's when the sonic boom appears. And then the sonic boom just dissipates through Shinra's back. As I said before, drawings, really well drawn frame, but of course it is a still frame, so you expect it to be well drawn. So now all of this can be attributed to build up. All of this is build up, right? You're holding this for a really long time, just one frame, and then you need the release. Boom. That is so satisfying to look at, and I'll show you why it's so satisfying. First of all, the ring that we saw earlier from the sonic boom, that is still here. Yeah, as you can see here, the ring of the sonic boom wave, that's just slowly moving back along with Shinra. So there's like a good amount of consistency, which is really cool. And here, the smoke animation, as I said before, his effects animation is really good, and that's seen everywhere, whether it's fire, whether it's particles, whether it's debris, or whether it's smoke. And you can see some of the smoke that is dissipating from the main cloud. You can see that he's drawing it with vertical lines, and that is exactly what I was talking about. If you can give vertical lines to anything, Miwa will do it. And here, this is when the scene starts, right? So let's see how many images he's using again for build-up. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is animated in 2s. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, around 8 to 10 is used for build-up. And it's not just holding an image any longer, it is moving slightly. His mask, looking like Mega Lucario out here, it's flowing slowly, and the smoke is dissipating slowly. Shinra is moving back slowly until the release, right? In the release, he's just fucking sketched out. Shinra is literally made of speed lines, and there's also an explosion in front of him. Cross flares, as I said before, Miwa uses cross flares a lot. Cross flares and impact frames are amazing for release because they're just so energetic, right? Yutaka Nakamura, of course, a very good example of someone who uses cross flares and impact frames a lot for build-up and release alike. So this is an example where impact frames is used for release. Here, when Boros is pounding Saitama downwards, he releases the punch connects, and then there's build-up, and then the release is in impact frames. And now here's an example where impact frames is used for build-up. This is part of the same fight, animated by Yutaka Nakamura. Boros connects his knee, and he animates the build-up with 14 impact frames. One knee animated with 14 impact frames, and all of these impact frames are works of art. It is so gorgeous. And then, of course, the release. It's done by, again, impact frames, but it's a different animator. I think it's Gosei Oda that animated that other part. Very cool impact frames, by the way, for the release. Like, you can see the entirety of Saitama's skeleton here. Anyway, coming back to this. So, I'm skipping frames now. All of those frames that I skipped are used for build-up. And then the release, the beginning of the release, Shinra just turns into speed lines, and there's an explosion in front of him. And then that explosion is released. And there's a huge cloud of smoke. At the edge of the smoke, you can see vertical lines because, as I said before, why not? And that is just the force of the explosion, by the way. The smoke is here, and you can see how far back Shinra is right now. That is Shinra. That is still Shinra. Shinra is still drawn as speed lines. And then that is held for one extra frame, and then he's just removed completely from the scene. You can see a bit of him at the left edge here. A little bit of lines, that is Shinra, and then he's just removed from the scene entirely. And then he sits with the release for a lot of frames too. Like, he gives the build-up a lot of time, and then the release is really quick, but then he gives the release a lot of time as well. It is just extremely satisfying. Now in motion, you can see just how well that scene works. Here, build up, release, and the cross flares. What are these cross flares supposed to depict? Let's see Shinra's position here. First, he's in the middle, almost exactly center of the screen. And the next time he appears, he's over here. So let's take the middle portion of that. The middle portion of that would be right here. He was here initially for the release, and after that he's here. So there's a mid portion, he would be here. And where was the cross flare? Cross flare was exactly there. So this cross flare is Shinra's position, and this cross flare is Karen throwing his punch. So he's not just drawing cross flares randomly on screen. They have a purpose. And when in motion, it flows seamlessly. It's all very hard to notice because it's just one frame, right? But it gets the job done. It's not there without use. And now Shinra is thrown very far back. And as you can see here, he's getting thrown in the left direction, right? Even though the smoke is forming from right to left, the line work goes upwards because that's what Miwa does. Because at the end of the day, the smoke is rising from the ground, right? So to show the left motion, you can just see that, right? It's forming from right to left. You don't need to emphasize the left motion, but he emphasizes the upward motion because it's more satisfying, because that's just what he does. He uses a lot of vertical lines. Again, they're really cool. Very natural-like motion. He has to kill his momentum of going backwards. So he uses his jet thrusters that is attached to his foot, or inside his foot, I should say. Again, sort of like cross flares here with extremely unique looking impact frames, beautiful impact frames. The smears here, again, upwards, vertical lines. Even the impact frames are like vertical lines. So again, he's killing his momentum here, and the cross flares behind his feet are used for build-up, and then the release. You see that? You see how it works? So there. From here, he killed his momentum, and then the cross flares, build up, boom, release. And the release here is done in the next cut, and it's super fast, boom. This smoke is the initial smoke of the punch, or this smoke is the smoke that rose up when Shinra was just tumbling backwards, and then he's gonna move through the smoke, so the smoke's gonna dissipate around him. Look at that, that is just so satisfying, that is just so cool. And here, as I was telling before, his drawings are really good. Did he have to draw this like this? No, he did not have to draw this with such a high degree of detail. This can be used as a wallpaper. In fact, I might use this as a wallpaper. I'll get a higher resolution version of this because this just looks fucking incredible. It is not noticeable in motion. You can see like a glimpse of his red eyes, but that's it. With the rest of it, you can't see it in real time. Yeah, it's barely, you can barely see the red eyes, and I can probably see it because I've already noticed it, so it's imprinted in my memory. But otherwise, it's pretty much impossible to notice. And Karen literally doesn't move here. So you have to go against the principles of animation here, right? If you hit something very hard, you need the opposite reaction as well. It's Newton's third law. The action is here, with Shinra connecting his kick, but there's no reaction because Karen is just that much of a beast. The impact here, done with impact frames, really cool impact frames too. Like the impact frames are like part of his mask, so it's like a plus formed on the screen, similar to his mask. That is very cool. So you have to do the release with something. You need to have the reaction for Shinra's action here, and the reaction here is the flame dissipating in all directions around Karen's face. And you can see here, the flame here, it's almost dissipating like beams. They're very straightforward flames. They're straight lines, I should say. Yeah, it's like straight beams of lasers just flowing around his face. Because if it's just flowing like water, right? Like one of those animators did with Mob Psycho 100, that is low energy flame. This is really high energy frames. It's like compressed frames getting shot in all directions because Shinra's kick is just so powerful. But Karen just doesn't move. It's like an unstoppable force against an immovable object, except the unstoppable force here is not very unstoppable because he literally got stopped, and the flames are just dissipating around Karen's face here because it's just a weak kick by Karen standards. And the horror in Shinra's face is just shown so perfectly. He's not used to his opponents being completely unfazed by his strongest kick. And really well drawn image, again, like all of his drawings. A lot of line work here. As I said before, it's like it's coming right out of the manga. He grabs the foot here and slams him to the ground. So the slamming itself has impact frames, really cool splooshy impact frames. Remember these impact frames because you're going to see these a lot because this is Kazuhiro Miwa's impact frames. A lot of upwards line work again, and then after he hits the ground, there's like the release of energy because he was slammed very hard on the ground, and So you need to release that energy as well. So you do that in slow motion. And the next move, so fucking sick. After he's got slammed to the ground, Karen just buries him in the concrete. Wow, right? That is so good. So again, he stomps on him, his foot is on him, and then he, boom, clicks it down basically. So how much time is spent with Karen's foot on top of his body? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 9 frames, 8 frames. So 8 frames of build up and then the release. Boom! Oh, that's so sick. Again, the reaction here is not shown via the ground, but it's very unrealistic. I mean, it's animation. You don't need to care about realism in animation. That's what makes it so sick, right? So to show the power of Karen's kick, he's kicking the ground. So it's like a reaction. That's the action. Him kicking the ground is the action, and the reaction is the ground kicking him back, if that makes sense. And that force is depicted by this motion. The white beam of energy originating from Shinra, originating from the kick, and it's moving upwards. It is like the reaction, opposite reaction to Karen's action, which is him slamming the ground. So he gets slammed, boom. It is upwards, it is emphasized that the energy beam is going from the ground to upwards. If it was any other animator, they would animate it from up to down, but this is just more satisfying. Our brain is able to catch stuff like that and decipher stuff like that, and that's why it looks so powerful to us. But what is impressive is coming up with stuff like this, because when you're coming up with stuff like this, you have to know what the final product will look like. And Kazuhiro Miwa knew that this is what the final product will look like, that the final product will look satisfying. That takes a ridiculous amount of experience, a ridiculous amount of imagination, and as usual, I'm always just blown away by the imaginative powers and talent, hard work that goes into creating things like these. When Karen slams him to the ground, the smoke clouds explode into bits of smoke particles. You can also, of course, see the ground exploding, and that is like a delayed reaction. You can see it happens in steps, right? So the kick first, the kick causes the smoke clouds to explode, and then the shockwave travels through Shinra, reaches the ground, and then the ground explodes. So it's done in a sequence so that there's more movement in the entire scene. And talking about sequence, here is Kazuhiro Miwa's speed lines. No lines, speed lines back. No lines, speed lines back. So that's how he does his speed lines. He alternates between drawing the speed lines and then removing the speed lines. So it creates this effect as if the speed lines are being released from Shinra's face or released from the body of whatever is moving here and is being released upwards here. You can tell that it's being released upwards here by the way they're animated, because they're just appearing in the frame and then being removed in the frame, like sequentially, right? So you can see that. And of course, the way Shinra is drawn here, the horror in his face, it actually hurts me. It feels like I'm the one getting kicked by Karen. Also, the way he draws the speed lines, it's as if he's drawing a strip first and then converting that into lines, just to give the scene that much more energy. And that's the entire purpose of speed lines all the time. They give the scene more energy. And this is Kazuhiro Miwa's signature speed lines. This is how he animates his speed lines. They are pretty thick as far as speed lines go. And they always appear at the edge of the characters. You can see here it's running straight all the way through Shinra's edge. And here you might be thinking it's not on the edge, but then again, it is in the edge of this circular thing. I don't know what these hollow things are, but this hollow thing is treated as a model here, and the speed line appears at the edge of that model. So very sick. They always appear in the same positions, same locations, except that they just appear in the frame and then removed from the frame sequentially. Shinra gets thrown away, pretty much stomped away really. Then we see Inka, this fucking bitch. But then we get this shot of Karen, and look at how well drawn that is. This is Miwa at his best, really. His drawings are always absolutely incredible. Yeah, the man is amazing. And Karen's walk here, you get a little bit more of those awesome speed lines, and then impact frames, vertical speed lines, and then impact frames. Again, this splooshy impact frames is like someone threw a bucket of black paint upwards onto a canvas. That's what this looks like. It's very splooshy. That's the word I'm using, and that's the word I'm sticking to, splooshy. That's right. And then the most boss scene in maybe anime history ever, like so fucking cool. And then another really well drawn image of Shinra. So that pretty much sums up every single one of Miwa's techniques. First of all, is his incredible sense of timing and with his build up and release. That is his use of cross flares. There it is. His use of vertical speed lines with pretty much everything. His use of impact frames, really cool looking impact frames, all these unique impact frames, and sometimes like splooshy impact frames, as I like to call it. As you can see here, the splooshy impact frames that I talk about. Another bit of his incredible timing that you can see here. And then of course, last but not the least, the incredibly well-drawn character designs. Now let's look at a different show. So Miwa is a veteran animator. He's like in his 40s right now, early 40s. But this scene here is really what established him as like an actual veteran animator. After this, he got tons of works, and all of his works are respected works. It's like the director is giving him very important scenes, starting with this one. This is a scene in My Hero Academia season 1, and this is not just any scene. This is arguably one of the most important scenes in the entire show. This is Deku's first ever smash, and this is animated by Kazuhiro Miwa. You'll see most of his same techniques here, except the speed lines. Here again, it's gonna slow down, yes, and then he's holding frames for the build-up. And then, boom, the release. The way his jacket just gets torn off, that is just really fucking impressive, very fucking cool. Here again, you can see that he is using speed lines, but it's not like the speed lines that he usually uses these days. He really only started using those lines recently, and maybe because of this scene. As you can see here, the punch itself has a lot of line work, and Deku's face also has a lot of line work as it's coming close to you. But this is not actually done by Miwa. At least I think that it's not done by Miwa, because I have the Genga here. I'll put it up on screen right now, and you can see here there's very little line work in Kazuhiro Miwa's Genga itself. So I'm assuming most of the line work that is added in this punch was actually done by Yoshihiko Umakoshi. Yoshihiko Umakoshi is a chief animation director, and he loves line work. He loves Canada style animation as well. He kept the base intact, like the timing. Everything feels like Kazuhiro Miwa's animation, but he added a lot more line work. And maybe Kazuhiro Miwa was inspired by what his final product looked like with all of this line work, and that's why he started adding a lot more line work to his own animations. Because when you work under people like Yoshihiko Umakoshi, it's just a level up for you yourself as an animator, and that's what maybe we saw from Kazuhiro Miwa. Of course, I could be entirely wrong. This could just be added by Miwa himself after he drew the Genga. But as you can see in the Genga itself, you can see some of the shadows on his fist have been animated. So I would think that that is the final product. But maybe I'm wrong. If you know better, you can tell me down in the comment section whether this is corrections made by Umakoshi or whether this is just animated by Miwa and I'm overthinking this. So this is another form of build-up, of course. The fist, you spend a lot of time with the fist. It's very slow coming towards the screen, and then the release. This almost looks like Utapon style, right? Like the color use and all of that stuff. It looks very much like Yutaka Nakamura's animation. The composite they do with Deku's, with One for All itself, like this almost intergalactic stuff, the space kind of stuff with energy flowing through it. It's always really fascinating, and always looks really good. And especially with this beam of energy here. This is of course not animation. This is composite. No one's drawing these things. It is just a filter that they're adding at that particular area, and it looks really sick. And then boom, extremely satisfying punch. After that, it's slow motion to just release the energy, all of that energy that has been released via the punch. Impact frames look extremely sick. Again, Deku is just a sploosh here. Deku is just lines. Deku is just a blob, dark blob on your screen right now. And then the big thing just explodes. So this is where it started for Miwa as a well-recognized, well-reputed animator in the industry. And since then, he's always started getting a bunch of works. He always used to get a bunch of works as well. He used to be important works as well. You know the difference, right? Like with Keiichiro Watanabe. Keiichiro Watanabe was always a well-reputed animator. We always knew that he's an extremely talented animator, especially with his background animation. But once Jujutsu Kaisen aired, he became a superstar within the Sakuga community. Because Jujutsu Kaisen is an extremely popular show where Keiichiro Watanabe is the star animator. Miwa never really got that opportunity. The closest that came is My Hero Academia. But then he got Fire Force, where he's the star animator. And then he took full advantage of his opportunity and made Fire Force an absolute visual spectacle every time he animates. So this is one of the very first scenes that Kazuhiro Miwa animated in Fire Force. It is episode 1 and one of the first scenes in episode 1, really. This is, I think, within the first 5 minutes of Fire Force, but this is like the 4th sequence that Miwa is animating for this episode. That should give you an idea of how much Miwa animated in Fire Force Season 1. He animated 3 whole sequences before this scene, but this is like the highlight of the first portion of episode 1, because Miwa also animates later in this episode, and that's one of his most iconic scenes ever. But let's start with this. So first we get his shoe. This is Shinra, his shoe melting off. Very reminiscent of the way Deku's jacket is torn. So, I mean, it's the same animator, you see the similar techniques. The fire's originating from his foot and it's blasting upwards because you can't show the reaction of the action going downwards, right? So you need the reaction to come upwards, and here the reaction is coming upwards with vertical speed lines. It's really smeared fire, but it's jagged on top. And then everything is smeared over here. His shoe is entirely smeared, and then his shoe just melts off in the most satisfying manner possible. So here again, there's a lot of vertical fire, but there's also fire that's moving backwards because you need to use this. He's using this as build-up, right? His foot is slowly lifting up, and he's gonna explode. Any moment now, he's gonna explode forward. Screen flashes white, and he explodes. So in motion, boom. So again, it's sort of like sequential animation. The release of the previous scene is the build-up for this scene. So this building up again, boom, release that. With really cool impact frames, Shinra is literally just line work. There's an incomplete cross flare behind him that gets completed later on, and then boom, he's exploding forward. Very slow. He comes very close to the screen, and then it's very fast. Something really underrated about this scene, I don't know if you noticed, is the composite and the CGI. The CGI background is really impressive, and it flows very well with the entire area that they have constructed here. It's not really high quality CGI, but it's composited really well. And like, you create this illusion of props in the background. There's this prop, right? That is in the background, you know this. But there's also this thing that is whooshing in the foreground. So our brain automatically thinks that, oh, that thing that is whooshing in the foreground is probably one of these props in the background. But these things that is whooshing in the foreground is just animated by Miwa. It's just a smear animated by Miwa. And then there's this background model is completely different. So there's a good amount of communication here between the animator and the compositing staff, which I'm assuming Miwa worked very closely with David Productions. He probably was in studio working very hard with every single element of the show, whether it's the CGI and the composite, the art direction, everything, to make sure his scenes look as good as possible, because he is, of course, the star animator for Fire Force. So now let's get to his most iconic scene ever. Again, there's a good amount of build-up here with the smoke wave that's forming in the ground. It's like a ripple of smoke, and all of this is build-up, release with the speed lines. No impact frame. That's actually kind of surprising that he didn't use impact frames for the release here. But with the extreme shift in colors and the speed lines, it does look like it is shifting here. The energy shift is very apparent. Boom. And then again, as I was talking about the composite, the scene is very well composited with the digital flames mixed in with his hand-drawn flames. It is composited definitely very well. And then more build-up with vertical speed lines, his classic. And then boom, Shinra blasts forward with some, again, it's really well-drawn image. A really, really well-drawn image. It looks goofy, but it's supposed to look goofy here. It's a life or death situation. You shouldn't really care about what you look like. But here he definitely uses impact frames, right? Yeah. So just splooshed up Shinra again. And here Shinra is like an impact frame, but everything around him is normal. And here Shinra is normal and everything around him is splooshed up. And his feet again have cross flares because his feet are the source of energy. Every time there's a particular source of energy, Kazuhiro Miwa uses cross flares to pinpoint that source of energy. And screen flashes white here, and the release is again pretty slow, but then it speeds up at the very end there. So now Shinra is whooshing forwards, and you can see Kazuhiro Miwa's signature speed lines. Really fucking cool. Oh, I paused at the perfect frame, because as you can see here, there are no speed lines. But the next frame, all the speed lines are back. So just, it's every single frame. It's every other frame this time. He's not even holding it for he's not even holding it for a single extra frame. It's every other frame that the speed lines are coming and going. So here, okay, one frame, gone, 1, 2, 1 frame, 1, 2, 1 frame. So the speed lines appear for 1 frame and then disappear for 2 frames. But then after that, in the close-up, they appear every other frame. And of course, the hair animation, the fabric animation, it's all absolutely fucking incredible. So again, this is a very good example of good art direction. The background is CGI here. Shinra is coming forward. He grabs what looks like a fucking nunchuck. I really have no idea what he grabs here. What the fuck is that? Okay, it's something that has a chain attached to it. But as he grabs it, the motion is now transferring from a forward motion to an upward motion. So the background changes. It's like a speed line background. Slightly forward because we are still moving forward, but it's mostly up. So the background changes from a CGI background to this background, and then gradually shifts again to a still image. The Infernal here shoots flames in Shinra's direction. Shinra uses his feet to kill his forward momentum. Cross flares again at the origin of his feet, the feet location. You can see the explosions here, the round explosions, and then they're released in the form of cross flares. And the next frames, he's that far back, and our brain, it'll fill in the gaps. As you can see, very few people will be confused as to what is going on there, even though he's skipping so many frames, right? He's very close to the camera right now, Shinra, that is. And at the next frame, he's that small. So he's gone that far away in a very few frame count, but it doesn't matter. And then a bunch of skating around the fire. So fucking cool. Another transition with the background from CGI background to upward lined, you know, the classic speed line background that anime uses a lot. And then he kills his momentum again, changes the direction with a classic impact frame this time. It's not like Kazuhiro Miwa's other impact frames. This is like a very classic looking impact frame. And the explosions are formed in rings here. A really cool wind animation. He changes the direction of his foot, aims it towards the Infernal, and then some of the most satisfying build-up that you'll ever see in anime. Extremely well drawn, of course. And then all of that was used for build-up. The next shot, the next cut is the release, and the release is just...
Nice.
And as soon as the release is very energetic, it's very chaotic, boom, and then it slows down again. It's like Tatsuya Yoshihara's technique where you slow down the release. So I'm sure you didn't catch the drawings because I didn't go through them frame by frame. Here you can see a really well-drawn face. What does that look like in motion? You won't see it. But again, he just draws it really well, because why the fuck not, right? Again, this is some of the best drawn images that you'll see in Sakuga animation. It's very hard to draw really good drawings, right? Because you have so many drawings to make, but he gets the job done. That's what Miwa is. That's who Miwa is. And that is Miwa's most iconic scene. That is what Miwa is known the best for. That work, that particular work in Fire Force. Next scene, this is Shinra versus Rekka. Just to go over the basics of Miwa animation again. Build up, release. Shinra is not even here, okay? But release, cross flares originating at his feet, of course. Release is slow, and then boom, it goes up really fast. And just look at how cool this looks, right? So he's rolling down. He's literally a ball here, but he can see the flames in very particular direction, in a very particular area. What is that area? That is his feet. His feet is the origin of his flames. So he slows down, and then you can really see that his feet is the source of the flames, if it wasn't already obvious. And then an extremely cool looking impact frame. Wow, that is a really cool looking impact frame. I haven't seen that before. But yeah, Shinra comes down, all of that power comes down onto Rekka's face. So sick. You can really feel the power here. Again, I wanted to show this for the drawings, and you can see here really, really good drawings. Like, holy shit, man, this is so sick. This is so sick. The fact that he's animating this many frames, right? This one scene, this one cut, how many frames are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So 17 drawings for that one cut. And he still has the patience to make every single one of those drawings look very impressive, as if they're straight out of the manga. That's just super sick. So Rekka puts his hands up to guard himself, but that's not gonna work against a fucking axe heel kick. Heel kick literally from hell. Again, this energy is passing straight through Rekka. And then this really cool devil wing things that he's doing, but the origin of the wings is his foot. I don't know if it's like that in the manga. Maybe it is like this in the manga. Okubo sensei is really well known for his very sick art style, really talented mangaka with his artwork. Very unique stuff he creates. I've read entirety of Soul Eater. I have not read Fire Force because I'm more of an anime guy, and I read Soul Eater because the anime is kind of shit towards the end there. But the manga is really good, especially the fight scenes. They're so fucking good. And here, this is an extremely energetic sequence, so he does not flash back and forth between frames that have speed lines and don't have speed lines. He just keeps the speed lines on the screen all the time. He changes their position slightly with each frame. And there's also this white smears on either side of the screen to add just that bit of energy more into the screen. The white smears are no longer used here. It just transitions to this wind smear thingo. He's not alternating between frames that have speed lines and don't have speed lines. He's just alternating their positions a bit for every single frame. And then build up again, build up again. You can really see it's building up for something. And what is it building up to? Boom. And explosion. So sick. Here's another example of some of his most insane speed lines, really. First of all, drawings really good. Oh my god, what a surprise. Miwa doing drawing very well. The kick, impact, boom, impact frames. And this shot is extremely impressive from what I remember. Yeah, so fucking sick. The perspective is so good. This arc has so much energy. Look at this arc. This arc is so exaggerated. His hands are the biggest part here. His right hand, to be specific, because it's the closest one to the camera. And his feet, in comparison, are very small because it's so far away from the camera. But as I said before, as I said multiple times in all of my animation breakdowns, there is no depth here. It is all 2D. It is just one flat drawing. This is one flat drawing. The depth here is created purely via imagination. And if you think that there is depth here, which you obviously do, that is because of Miwa's style. But with arcs that are so exaggerated, the background will look awkward. So what do? You have a good art director who can adapt to the foreground animation. So as you can see here, it's like a fisheye effect with the background. It's like a globular shape. And here, the build-up needs to be absolutely insane, right? Because this is like the climax of the fight. So the speed lines also need to be absolutely insane. The impact frames here, by the way, these are his classic impact frames, like the impact frames that Nakamura has popularized. These impact frames just look fucking sick. And crossflare again, I don't know if this classifies as a crossflare. It looks more like a sun exploding. But here, look at his speed lines. It is Miwa's classic speed lines, but they are huge. Look at these speed lines. Look how enormous they are. It's like a fucking lame party trick. How do you give bigger energy to a scene? You use bigger speed lines. And the Korna, the demon, is appearing in the form of vertical speed lines, because why not? The teeth appear, completely engulf Karen, and when the teeth come in contact with the ground, every single location where the teeth is coming in contact with the ground is shown via cross flares, and then build up, boom, release. Also a pretty cool drawing. It just looks like it's straight out of the manga. It looks like a colored manga panel. And that's about some stuff, everything that I wanted to talk about Kazuhiro Miwa's animation in Fire Force. Let's look at Demon Slayer now, because this madman actually also animated in Demon Slayer. He got the opportunity and he made the most out of that opportunity. First animating in Mugen Train. So this is a scene that he animated in Mugen Train, is the fight against Enmu. I know I'm supposed to talk about Miwa's animation, but I'm blown away by how good the CGI looks here actually. Like this whole scene is CGI. So they created this whole really cool dynamic sequence by just using CGI. And the way they make dynamic is by using all these smears at the edges of the screen with the 3D models. Very cool. I mean, it's Ufotable. What do you expect from Ufotable? You only expect the best. So now the bone is exposed, and then Tanjiro. So it's like so fucking fitting, right? Tanjiro is using fire breathing, and you get Miwa to animate the sequence because, of course, you get Miwa to animate fire. Who else other than Miwa to animate fire? He is animating fire almost like liquid here, engulfing the sword. And here, look at this build up and release. Build up, super slow motion, and then release. The release frame is coming to the end of the motion. I'll actually act the scene out here. The motion starts here, and the ending motion is this. Fuck, I'm not even flexible to do that, really? Goddamn. So yeah, this is the ending motion. So here's what he skipped. He skipped all of these. He went from directly this to the completion of the arc. And it works. It's not required. Our brain will fill in the gaps. And also helps that he animates this beautiful impact frame. It's originating with a cross flare, of course. And then you can see how it's dissipating, right? The flames are forming. And not only are the rings forming, it is moving in clockwise direction. Clockwise direction is the same direction that Tanjiro makes the arc with the sword. So it is telling us that he's made this awesome cut. And of course, this is exaggerated. If he's animating in a realistic way, then this arc would start here and end here. There wouldn't be a perfect circle. There's no requirement for a perfect circle here. That's not realistic. But who the fuck gives a shit about realism? This is more satisfying, and that's what you need to do. You just need to do what's more satisfying. So crazy amount of build up, really cool impact frames, and then the release. So fucking cool. And then the rings just keep dissipating, the shock travels throughout the entire train, and it's called Hinokami Kagura, clear blue sky, and then the sky turns blue. The composite is like moving alongside these blue rings. So the inside borders of the blue rings, the composite changes, and it's morning inside the ring, whether it's just the regular nighttime outside the ring. So I'm just really impressed by the composite again. I mean, it's Ufotable. What the fuck do you expect? I keep saying that because really, how can you expect anything below perfection from Ufotable's composite team at this point? But yeah, that's how Miwa's animation looks like with Ufotable. That's not all though, there's more. Again, I'm more impressed by the composite than I am with the animation. Not saying that the animation is bad. Of course not. If you watched, maybe 30 minutes already of what I've talked about, Miwa is not a bad animator. In fact, it's the exact opposite. He's very good. But the composite is just so good that it just steals the spotlight. When the blue lighting appears, the entire composite changes, right? So the composite here is very bright. It's really bright red in color. But when the lightning appears, the composite shifts. So now the source of light is the lightning, and the edge of the screen is dark. So make the lightning the center of the attention. It's vignette. It is literally vignette, right? That's what vignette is. I don't really exactly know what vignette is, but I think this is what vignette is. It's forcing our attention to a particular area of our screen, which Ufotable does really well. And then the back and forth between the composite is really cool. This really cool smears, impact frames. Kazuhiro Miwa style. And then this flashing of the lightning, this was definitely his idea, right? This is the same thing that he does for those impact frames. It's a real shame that this blood here, CGI blood, looks absolutely fucking disgusting. Ufotable needs to improve upon their CGI blood. That's the one thing that they need to improve upon. Everything else is great, but their CGI blood. I don't know why they even use CGI blood here. They could have just made Miwa animate the blood because he's so good at FX animation. But I guess they're just making the animators work a little bit easier by animating the blood using CGI, but it's not necessary. But the flashing of lightning is so cool, and I don't know if the flashing of different colored lightning was his idea, but that also looks really cool. So blue lightning, no lightning, yellow lightning, no lightning, blue lightning. Really cool. And here we have some Eterno Circus, right? That's Eterno Circus, right? Definitely. Yeah. So again, very red composite. You can see the lower portion here. It's all very red. But then the electricity appears and it all shifts. The area that was red, that was light here, is now dark, right? The corner, just look at the left corner of the screen. It's very light colors and boom, it's super dark. Whereas the center, where Zenitsu's here, it's kind of darker compared to like the left corner and like the bottom area of the screen. It is very reddish light colors, whereas Zenitsu's background is very dark. As soon as the lightning appears, Zenitsu's background is super light, whereas the edges are dark. So it's instantly focusing or making our attention shift. So they want us to look at Daki's obi here, Daki's obi's motion towards Zenitsu, but then they want to shift our attention instantly. Boom, you're looking at Zenitsu. A simple trick, and he kicks off the obi, as you can see here. The energy is getting released off the obi. He's animating lightning so well. It's so gorgeous. The zigzag pattern just gives lightning such a snappy feeling, which is exactly what it needs to feel like. It's also very inky. In some cases, it also flashes yellow. Really fucking cool. I want to believe that this is in fact Miwa's idea to make it yellow sometimes. And here you can barely see Zenitsu, and now you can pretty much completely see him. Again, here I'm really impressed by Ufotable's composite. This is CGI obi, but if you can see here, there are zigzag patterns on the obi. That is because Ufotable created two different styles of obi for Daki. So one obi is like the regular obi that is used for most of our scenes when the obi is not moving very fast. But for scenes where the obi is moving very fast, you can't use that obi because that obi does not have smears. So you'll have to use motion blur for the obi's location, but the obi is a very thin strip, so you'll have to use motion blur in a very localized area of the screen, which is very difficult. So what they did is just make an entirely different set of obi that has pre-built smears on it. So this is not actual smears. This is just what the obi looks like. This is what the CGI model looks like. It has zigzag. Even if it wasn't moving, even if it was entirely still, it would still have these zigzag patterns. Remember the splooshy impact frames? Of course, cross flare to initiate the impact frames. But then this is the splooshiest of splooshy impact frames that you'll see from Kazuhiro Miwa's animation. Another, can't really call it a crossfairs, more like it's literally a star. And then you get some more absolutely disgusting looking CGI blood that does not overstay its welcome whatsoever. It disappears very quickly. The lightning flashes between blue, yellow, very cool. And then you get Miwa lines. As you can see here, these are definitely Kazuhiro Miwa's lines. This scene is presumed as Kazuhiro Miwa's animation on Sakugaboru, but this is definitely Miwa. Just from the speed lines alone, it's very easy to tell that it is Kazuhiro Miwa's animation. And then he also finishes this up with the climactic sequence of the fight. He only does the build-up of the climactic sequence. The release of this climactic sequence, which is this portion, whoosh, boom, that is done by a different animator, but the build-up is entirely done by Kazuhiro Miwa. So you start with the lightning again, a really frantic motion with the background and stuff. And here you can really see Miwa's speed lines. So the speed lines appear and they disappear the next frame. They appear again, disappear again, as Miwa has been doing. Inosuke appears. All of this is, I think, still being done by Miwa. It's still by Miwa. Again, a really cool example of Miwa lines here. Like this is just absolute classic Miwa lines. Speed lines all throughout the edges of his hair, edges of his nose, edges of his mouth here, edges of his hair again, and they appear, they disappear, as Miwa lines do. And then, like, the most insane amount of energy you'll ever see from any scene ever. They were just the perfect decision to use Kazuhiro Miwa for the scene. It's either Kazuhiro Miwa or who else could you use? You could use Shu Sugita for a scene like this. Shu Sugita is also like the finale guy, right? Shu Sugita's build-up animation is very cool. That's why he's like the finale guy. But here, a scene that's already iconic, it again looks like the manga panel has been brought to life. Even though I haven't seen the manga panel, I don't know if it looks like this at all. But this looks extremely inky animation, extremely sketch-line animation, but with a very good layer of composite. It made to look like it's paper. The composite makes it look like it's paper, which is like opposite to Ufotable's usual style, where It looks very digital, but this composite makes it look like it's paper. An insane amount of line work. Like, just thinking about the amount of time that must have gone into just drawing upward lines. Crazy. And then it's switches. This is done by a different animator. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll have to cut it very short because I've been recording. I have been recording for 1 hour, 25 minutes straight. I started at, I think, 12:30. I don't know when I started, but it's 1:46 now, and I do have college tomorrow. Fuck. Shit. I enjoy doing this. It's things like this that really tell me that I enjoy doing this, because I didn't even know that I just spent 1.5 hours talking about one man's animation styles. It's stuff like this that is like an extra confirmation to myself that this is my passion and this is what I want to do with my life. I want to share this to like other people and get them interested in animation. And if I can make a career out of this, all the more amazing. But by my YouTube comments, it seems more like the people that are watching my content want me to succeed even more than I want myself to succeed. It's always like, wow, you're so underrated. It's actually crazy how underrated you are and stuff. I'll give it time. Like, this is a hobby for now. I actually have college and stuff on the side. No, actually, I have college as my main stuff. This is on the side, I should say. But yeah, I was not actually supposed to talk about this. I don't want to make this video any longer than it needs to be. And yeah, that's Kazuhiro Miwa for you guys. I'll make more animator spotlights in the future. I'll also do like a detailed animation analysis on Fireforce itself, because now that the Kazuhiro Miwa scenes are done, I can focus on other animators. Like, I think there's a scene by Yuki Yamashita that's absolutely insane. There's also Yuki Sato, absolutely incredible animator. So I'll talk about Fireforce probably at a later date, because I have a bunch of ideas and I need to make those videos first. So if you like this video, if you learned something new about animation and Kazuhiro Miwa's techniques, leave a like. If you did not like this video, leave a dislike and tell me down in the comment section how I can improve. If you want to see more of this stuff, subscribe. And that's about it. Thanks for the views.